What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we have got our Week 15 fantasy wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup. So make sure to tune in. If you guys enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe. Also, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us as the week progresses. Send us your questions there and we'll make sure to answer them. And also, check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. Sign up for our free newsletter to get access to exclusive content. All those details in the description. But for now, let's get right into it. Before getting into our breakdowns, I want to give you guys a quick word from our sponsors at Overlay Fantasy Sports, who are taking DFS to a whole nother level. And I specifically want to highlight their matchup shop function, which is an absolute blast. In fact, we've been using it since the start of the NFL season because, let's face it, betting on the same old Team A versus Team B can get a little bit stale, a little bit boring. Well, that's not even close to being the case with the matchup shop of Overlay Fantasy, as it allows you to bet on individual player matchups, and it's super simple. Just pick whichever player you think will have the higher fantasy performance. And just like a regular bet would work, check out the spreads, do your research, and then win some money. You can bet on pretty much any single sport that you want, whether it's NFL, golf, MLB, etc. All those options are there. And again, super simple. Pretty much for any single NFL game coming up, you've got a bunch of different matchups that are always updated and added to. So if it's something as simple as just putting a single submission, you can do that. But guess what? If you want to get a parlay going and double up some of those winnings, you can do that as well. So take advantage of this. All of that homework you're doing for your fantasy lineups, let's have that translate to some big time winnings for your wallet as well. So do yourself a favor and check out Overlay Fantasy's matchup shop now. Our first game of the week features the LA Chargers at the Vegas Raiders. And since this is a quick turnaround on Thursday, we have got a lot of names to watch out for here, especially on the Chargers side of things. And we start with Keenan Allen because him and Mike Williams both got a little bit nicked up last week versus the Falcons. And with only a couple of days in between those two games, it's going to be a tricky situation because, look, this game definitely has huge scoring upside. Neither one of these defenses are elite, and I anticipate a lot of points, a high scoring affair here that will be dictated by the passing attack. Now, obviously, if Keenan Allen plays, I would start him absolutely. He is in the wide receiver 1 category, even more so in PPR scoring. Mike Williams, also a nice play here in standard scoring leagues. If one of those guys does not play, I also really like Tyron Johnson, who is going to have something to say about this scoring process. When one of these guys has been absent, whether it's Allen or Williams, Tyron Johnson has gotten involved. And yes, I know Austin Eckler will have his in the passing department, but I do think two wide receivers here at least will be fantasy relevant. So right now, unfortunately, we just have to play the waiting game, see which one of these guys suits up, potentially doesn't. But until then, you have got a lot of options to like for the Chargers in terms of fantasy wide receivers. Then for the Raiders, it doesn't really change on a weekly basis. Nelson Aguilar has the highest ceiling. It's pretty much Darren Waller is their top wide receiver, even though he's tight end, obviously. And then Nelson Aguilar. Other guys, just way too inconsistent. Don't have the touchdown upside that Nelson Aguilar does. So here, I think that Aguilar offers solid mid-level wide receiver 2 upside. If he gets a touchdown, probably high-end wide receiver 2. And then, like I said, not going to get too cute here with the other wide receivers for the Raiders. Hunter Renfrow, Ruggs, the others are sits. Moving on, we've got the Bills at the Broncos. This is a game here where I love the Bills side of things with Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley. I think they're going to be airing out the football quite successfully versus the Broncos. So I love that duo here. No-brainer starts for me. As far as the Broncos, a little bit tough because I'm guessing that it's going to be a situation where they're playing from behind, so they will have to pass the football, but they won't have as much success as they did versus the Panthers last week. So temper your expectations. Right now, the wide receiver that I would trust the most is Tim Patrick. KJ Hamler, yes, coming off a huge game. Currently have him as a sit. That Bills secondary, is very solid. And Hamler, he had 2 catches that were both touchdowns. So it's a situation if they don't convert into touchdowns, it's kind of a bad play with KJ Hamler. Jerry Jeudy just hasn't been trending in the right direction. So honestly, if you're looking for wide receiver options here, it's kind of slim picking for the Broncos side of things. I also do expect Drew Lock to kind of fall back down to earth a little bit. Patrick right now, the most viable guy, but whoever you start for the Broncos, I think, probably best case scenario, low end wide receiver 2, and then Gabriel Davis for the Bills. A little bit too touchdown dependent for my liking, so I am sitting him as well. Afterwards, Panthers at the Packers. Another Saturday game here. We are going to start DJ Moore if he plays. That's a big if. Coming off the COVID, also had a kind of a gimpy ankle after his performance a couple of weeks ago. So that's something to monitor. If he plays, though, he is a solid start because Christian McCaffrey will not be available yet again. So the Packers are definitely going to put up a lot of points, which means the Panthers are going to have to throw the football to keep pace. So Moore and Robbie Anderson, very solid plays, I would say. Low-end wide receiver 2s. If you're very desperate, you could put in Curtis Samuel, I would say, as well. If DJ Moore doesn't play, then Curtis Samuel is definitely a start for what it's worth. For the Packers, it's the same situation every single week. Devontae Adams, he is a must-start, wide receiver 1. He could have a huge game here. He probably will, as has been the case all year when healthy. But other than that, MVS, Allen Lazard, I'm fading them. I think Tunyon is going to have some success at the tight end position. I also expect Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones to have success versus this Panthers rush defense. So I'm not looking at the other wide receivers for the Packers. Afterwards, Patriots at the Dolphins. This is a little bit tricky. If Devontae Parker plays in this game, then I'll start him, but temper those expectations versus the Patriots defense. And then Lynn Bowden Jr. for Miami. The situation here is that he has got the ability to be played as a running back as well in some leagues. And that is huge because, again, Devontae Parker's status is up in the air. Mike Gesicki just got hurt, so his status up in the air. So all of a sudden, not that many pass catchers here. And with the versatility that Bowden has to be played in multiple positions, he could be a week winner for this matchup. I love the versatility he has. And for that reason, I would take a chance on him if your leagues allow for him to be played at that spot. And then otherwise, though, not too many names that I like. Jacoby Myers, Damiere Byrd. I trust this Dolphins defense. I don't trust the Patriots passing attack. It's as simple as that. So no thank you to them. And then Mac Hollins. I wouldn't get too cute here with the Dolphins pass catchers. I think this will be a rather low-scoring affair. And if Devontae Parker plays and with Lynn Bowden in there as well, I just don't trust Mac Hollins enough. Next up, we've got the Jaguars at the Ravens, and hey, Minshew Mania is back for what that's worth, and this is a game where the Jaguars will likely be down rather quickly, and that means they're going to have to focus on the passing attack. I like Keelan Cole, and the return of Minshew is actually something that I do like for DJ Chark, but again, temper those expectations versus a pretty good Ravens secondary. Then for Baltimore, look, it's a roller coaster ride, no matter how you look at it, but it's going to be a situation where Marquise Brown has the most upside out of any Baltimore wide receiver because of the touchdown upside. Now, for what it's worth, I do think this will be a run-heavy type of game for the Ravens, and Brown will probably have his fair share of drops, but he also has that huge touchdown upside, like we said. He can get behind the defenders, and all he needs is one big play, and I definitely think he can get it versus the Jaguars. So definitely tread with caution, but it's a situation where you could do worse here. Good matchup, so in standard formats, I would definitely take a chance on Marquise Brown if you need that huge upside play on the week. And then otherwise, Laviska Shenault, I don't want to look at multiple wide receivers for the Jaguars. Just not the best situation here. Like I said, decent Ravens secondary, and I do expect Chark and Keelan Cole to be the main contributors here. Then for the Ravens, Willie Snead is a sit for us. I just don't think the game plan will go his way. It's going to be rush heavy, and then it's going to be big play dependent, and he doesn't figure in either one of those departments. Moving on, we've got the Texans at the Colts. We've got to keep an eye out here for Brendan Cooks, whether he makes his return this week. If he does, I would play him. If not, Kiki Kuti and Chad Henson are both very viable starts in a game where, again, I anticipate the Texans will have to pass the ball a bunch. And then for the Colts, it's pretty much T.Y. Hilton. He's been sensational these last couple of weeks, and I anticipate it will continue versus the Texans again this week in that lousy defense. Otherwise, Colts wide receivers, other than T.Y. Hilton, worth starting, I would say no thank you. Michael Pittman Jr., probably the other big name that you would be considering. But I anticipate the Colts focus on rushing the football here. They've been doing very well in that department as of late, and that is one of the Achilles heel for this Texans defense. So I expect a lot of Jonathan Taylor and Naheem Hines. I just don't think Michael Pittman Jr. will have a lot of opportunities due to that, so I am sitting him here. Following this, we've got the Lions at the Titans. I'm not interested in starting anyone for the Detroit Lions because right now, as it stands, Matthew Stafford probably not going to play. If that changes, then yeah, I would take a chance on Marvin Jones and Danny Amendola because the Titans defense isn't all that great. But with Chase Daniel under center, I would say no thank you. For the Titans, yes, this will be another game where Derrick Henry is featured, but A.J. Brown and Corey Davis also have good matchups here. I think both are in the mid to high-end wide receiver 2 category for the week. Next up, 49ers at the Cowboys. Deebo Samuel injured last week, expected to miss some time, so Brendan Ayuk will be the beneficiary yet again. I anticipate a large volume, lot of targets here, and versus this Cowboys defense, not bad, so he's got high-end wide receiver 2 upside on the week for the Cowboys. Anyone other than Amari Cooper, I just don't trust right now. I'd probably have him ranked lower than Brendan Ayuk, low-end wide receiver 2, just because this 49ers defense is a little bit more stingy, and you could be in a situation where, honestly, all the wide receivers here bust for the Cowboys. That's why we're not taking any unnecessary chances on CeeDee Lamb or Michael Gallup. Afterwards, Seahawks at Washington. Even though this is a tough matchup for the Seahawks, you start DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett pretty much every week. DK Metcalf, obviously the better choice because of the higher floor. Tyler Lockett, definitely more boom or bust, but what you're hoping for is, especially in standard scoring leagues, right around maybe 10 points if you throw in a touchdown. Well, that's gravy. Then for Washington, yes, Terry McLaurin was awful this last week, but that's because Washington didn't really pass it all that much. That will not be the case this week. They will have to if they want to keep pace with the Seahawks. And that Seahawks secondary is lousy. So Terry McLaurin should be in a great situation to have a bounce back effort. He is probably a low-end wide receiver 1 on the week. Then Bears at the Vikings. Allen Robinson continues to be the only wide receiver for the Bears that you should really be starting. He's got the touchdown upside, and he's going to get the most consistent volume. He is a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1 if he gets that touchdown. For the Vikings, tough matchup here, Thielen and Justin Jefferson, but you continue to start them because they've got huge upside. And however, not nearly as high though as Allen Robinson. So I would put them in the mid-level wide receiver 2 category. And then otherwise, Anthony Miller, Darnell Mooney, I would be sitting them here. I anticipate the Bears will continue to focus on rushing the football. And as has always been the case, whoever's under center for the Bears at quarterback, it's mainly Allen Robinson that's supported for fantasy purposes. The other guy is just not reliable. Moving on, we've got the Bucs at the Falcons. Here, I would start Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. I anticipate that the Bucs will have some success airing out the football. I think Godwin is your best bet out of the Bucs wide receivers at this point. Mike Evans has got the touchdown upside. Antonio Brown's usage has kind of been trending down as of late, so I would sit him here, especially in a game that could feature a lot of the rushing attack. Then for the Falcons, Calvin Ridley, obviously a must start. If Julio Jones plays, and that's a big if, you start him. And if he doesn't, Russell Gage could be a nice start as well because I anticipate the Falcons will have zero success rushing the football versus the Bucs. So that means it's going to come down to the arm of Matt Ryan. And that means a lot of opportunities for these wide receivers. So if Jones isn't there, I would take a chance on Russell Gage for sure. And honestly, even if Julio Jones does play, Russell Gage is still a decent start here. He's got probably high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2 upside. Afterwards, Eagles at the Cardinals. Only one wide receiver here I want to trust, and that is DeAndre Hopkins. Probably not a shocker to anybody. But you might be saying, well, why wouldn't you take a chance on Jalen Reagor, Greg Ward, Alshon Jeffrey? It's simple. Yes, even though the Eagles won last week, a lot of it had to do with their success running the football. Hell, Jalen Hurts had over 100 yards rushing at the quarterback position. And say what you will, but he didn't have all that much success passing the football. Yes, this Cardinals defense isn't as good as that of the New Orleans Saints, but I don't anticipate that to all of a sudden change just on a week-to-week basis. I still think that Jalen Hurts is limited as a passer, so I'm fading all the Philadelphia Eagle wide receivers. And for the Cardinals, Christian Kirk, just way too up and down. Eagles defense is all right, and I still think Hopkins is the main guy here, so I'm fading Christian Kirk here. Then we've got the Jets at the Rams. I'm starting, pretty much the two duos here, Jamison Crowder and Brashad Perriman. For what it's worth, definitely don't expect as much from the Jets wide receivers because this Rams defense is a lot more stingy. But in a situation where I anticipate the Rams will jump out to a big lead and the Jets won't have the rushing attack available to them, these guys should get the volume, so they probably belong specifically in PPR settings in the high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2 category, but the Rams wide receivers is here really who you should be targeting. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. I anticipate both these guys to have very solid games, high-end wide receiver 2s on the week. Then we've got the Chiefs at the Saints. Tyreek Hill for the Chiefs every single week. That's the name of the game here. That hasn't changed since week 1 and continue to do so. Wide receiver 1. For the Saints here, this is going to be a tricky one because this is going to be the best offense they've played since Taysom Hill has gone under center, which means, they're going to have to air it out, which isn't necessarily the forte of Taysom Hill, but Michael Thomas. And, I think Emmanuel Sanders is probably going to be the next guy up. Alvin Kamara will definitely be involved as a pass catcher, even though, he's obviously a running back. But the Saints are going to have to air it out if they want to keep pace with the Chiefs. So I think Sanders is also a viable start here. Traquan Smith, though, for the Saints, I wouldn't get too cute here. I don't think the Saints will be able to sustain 3 wide receivers here, especially with how involved Alvin Kamara could be as a pass catcher. Next up, Browns at the Giants. I'll start Jarvis Landry and I'll start Rashad Higgins. Yes, this Giants defense is stingy, but the targets should be there for these guys. I think both of them are probably low-end wide receiver 2s. Then for the Giants, this one is tough with the way Daniel Jones has played, with the way that offensive line has allowed him to take hits. Is he even going to finish the game like we saw last week? It's uncertain, but this matchup isn't all that bad. So Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, if you guys are desperate, Darius Slayton has that big play ability, but either way, the better side here is the Browns side of things at the wide receiver position. And then I wouldn't be looking at Golden Tate right now. The way this offense is looking for the Giants, I don't think they can sustain, 3 fantasy wide receivers, even 2 might be pushing it, so Golden Tate is a sit for us. Then Steelers at the Bengals. Don't start anybody for the Bengals. It's as simple as that. This is an awful matchup. They have nobody at the quarterback position, so Tyler Boyd, AJ Green, and T. Higgins are all sits. Then for the Steelers, though, Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, kind of a 180 situation. I would start all of them. Deontay Johnson is your best bet. Juju Smith-Schuster, with the amount of receptions he's been getting, especially in PPR formats, not a bad play either. And then I would also take a chance on Chase Claypool, just because this Bengals defense is absolutely awful. The Steelers' rushing attack hasn't been all that great. I don't anticipate that'll change all of a sudden because in other previous very good matchups, they still haven't gotten it done. So to me, they continue to air out the football, and that means all these 3 guys could be viable options. So with that, we wrap up our Week 15 fantasy wide receiver start and sit breakdown. And as always, let us hear it in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree, along with any other start or sit questions you guys might have? We'll make sure to answer them all. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, and also give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there as the week progresses. We answer all the questions that we receive there, so make sure to take advantage of that as well. And also check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. Sign up for a free newsletter, get access to exclusive content, all those details in the description. But for now, we'll see you guys in future videos.